Well, people, it's just that I want to say I'm warming up, and do you know what I'm saying? That well, normally people will say I'm all fired up, but since I am not much of a live streamer, I can't really say that. Although was trying to say I'm warming up for the new year. I have a plan on before this year's end, maybe about next week or so. I will do a discussion video, small discussion video about every, no, not about every, but almost about every single series I review. And note that is going to be an almost. I will probably just pick three of those series and just talk a little bit about them. However, this time where I'm going into another subject, and I'm gonna talk about this series, hopefully by the end of this year, and that was Eden Zero. But the title of this is Hiro Mashima's Trinity work. I call it Trinity because although he has much more things on his belt, so far it appears that Rave Master, Fairy Tail, and Eden Zero is the only ones that are actually selling. So I call those his Trinity works. Now, let's talk a little quickly about Hiro Mashima. For as long as he thought to remember, he had always wanted to be an artist, a manga artist, and he does not disappoint. Unlike so many authors out there, he is noted to have more strong stamina than others have. And I mean, I can't draw for the life of me, so I respect him for that. But many of the other people do not, mostly because of his. They say he's a good artist. Some say that he's not a good artist because he can draw, but he's also stealing other artists' work. And I'm just saying, do you have any idea how difficult it is to find originality? And some people just want to do it that kind of style. You know, if I was an animator and I could animate very well, I would have taken the animation style of a show I really like and make that my ground movements of my animating a show. But I can't animate for the life of me. I can only write a story. So I hope I'll find an animator one day. But we got off topic. So what I'm trying to make a point here is that you can't criticize someone for taking inspirations, whatever if it's true or false. The drawing is his skill, and that is something that is very impressive, and I always respect someone for that. So he has always wanted to be a manga artist, and eventually he did create some stuff. I don't really know his start, but his most famous, well, not maybe not most famous. In fact, it was probably the other one who became more famous. But his first series was Rave Master. Now let's try to talk a little bit about that. I have read Rave Master. I have almost actually read every single Mashima work, but I have not read his short stories. I haven't even read the stories he actually tried to make come true, if that is the right word to say it. No, probably not, but whatever. It's um, it's the fact that what was Raymaster about? Well, it was about these about Haru Glory, who, after an incident, met a very strange creature that some people called a dog, others called a bug, and we, on the other hand, do not even know what that is. And I think that's the point. I think we are never really meant to find out what that blue was. And then he crossed the paths with an old man, and in the end inherited his swords due to an, well, I want to say an accident. And he became the guy known as Rave Master and had to collect the raves around the world. The old man, the former Rave Master, was too old for that. And during this adventure, as he left his island, he also ran into Ellie, a cute young girl who is revealed to have lost her memory. And so the adventure began. So, what was Rave Master's strongest points? I mean, the art evolved as the story went on. You can definitely see that from chapter 1 to I think 150. You can actually see that the art is good, but it's also kind of dirty. I think by the end of the show, he really had gotten the right style to make this less dirty and less, uh, well, confusing. but the art itself is also very good, and the characters are really dear and making wide scenario of it. But what I really felt was the greatest accomplishment of Rave Master was the adventure, because it actually did feel like an adventure. I mean, granted, there's a lot of adventure mangas out there nowadays, but what I liked about Rave Master's adventure is that it felt really like in the end they came to a goal, and in the end they came to an answer, so to speak. Granted, it may not have been the most flashiest of adventures compared to many others, but it still worked. They met friends, they met allies, and they all went on this different journey. So, what I liked about Rave Master most, I think, was the adventure. Then it's the characters. The characters are pretty simple to understand, which is not wrong, really. After all, it was Hiro Mashima. When it comes to him, he likes to do more simpler characters, but it's still very appreciated. But the characters were also very interesting. I think the, I think the, the greatest thing about when it came to characters was in the main characters of Haru and Ellie, because Haru was a very prime example of an all-loving hero. I mean, all-loving heroes exist everywhere, but I mean not everywhere, but in many mangas. However, he really did feel like that sincere all-loving hero that you really like. Granted, it can be annoying sometimes, but he was entirely selfless. Granted, he could be angry and he didn't forgive evil, but he also could feel pity for evil. He was a prime example of a man that stood tall for it all. Ellie, I mean, she was goofy at the beginning, but in the end, it turns out her fate, spoiler alert, was more tragic than we really felt. Was it predictable? Well, to be honest, I'll get to that in a bit. And then we had the rest. Mushika, he was a pretty slick character. He was kind of cool. Jet, on the other hand, I mean, Jet's personality was kind of mysterious, to be honest. Many times, at first, he was an enemy, and then he appeared to be a guy who was looking for blood. But in the end, he turned into what is that word? A still loyal friend. But he didn't really win that many fights as you thought, but he still kept this Sundar side in it. And then they were joined by other crew members, including, spoiler alert again, Yet's girlfriend, who looked like a serious girl but also had a kind heart, and another girl of it all. They even had a temporary companion, which, by the way, I felt it was very sad that she didn't join the adventure. You know, she wasn't even in the epilogue, in the final chapter of the entire series, and I found that pretty bad, because that arc was one of the best arcs of Rave Master. However, I'm not singing Rave Master every single praise. There are some plot points over there that looks a little messy. But it's also worth noting that this is Hiro Mashima. He tends to write these plot moments that sometimes I think he forgets about them. What is the prime example? Well, most of the example is that this was one of the first series that showed that he could forgive villains, because many villains in the end became allies. But it also felt like these villains were doing some unforgivable acts that when they became allies, it felt like really just a complete 180, and that was not to everyone's liking, to be honest. Another very strange thing of it all was what is that word? Is that Ellie, spoiler alert again, was in the end turned out to be Risha, a girl from 50 years ago that, thanks to an enchanted slumber, had stopped aging. However, while the clues that Ellie and Risha were connected to each other was pretty strong, there was also some misleading moments every now and again that seemed to throw us off guard by saying that maybe Risha was a separate spirit compared to, you know, Ellie. Not that Ellie was Risha, but all when the reveal came, all those different episodes, so to speak, we saw, they took a different turn. They made us question: was that really necessary? I mean, when I'm saying necessary, was that really what were looking for, or was it something else? I mean, it could very well have been a rule of symbolism, by meaning that what we saw was not really what happened. And what I mean to say by that is a prime example of that is Risha being shackled here, and then when they get into the memory of Ellie, like unshackle yourself. So maybe in a way it was Ellie's true memories subconsciously showing these false memories to give us an air thinking that we thought this, okay, this is Risha, a separate spirit from Ellie. But in the end, it really were Ellie's memories. Another false of it all is that the villains, while good, were also not the best. As I said before, many villains did make redemption. But the main villain of this arc actually got a lot of complaints because he was, in other words, a very big complainer. But I actually, while I don't really say that the villain was extremely good, it was also worth noting that he popped up just like this. There was no foreshadowing hint of him until it finally was done. Uh, I still say that what his character made perfect sense because I have tried to say this to people dozens and dozens of times, but no one listens to it. It's the fact that despair can drive you insane. You have to realize that. And it's a miracle that I haven't gone out saying and wanted to destroy this world out there because I'm so fed up by it that I don't even know what to do about it anymore. But that was beside the point. So yeah, and yes, some characters. While the characters definitely made the Rave Master one of the better things, is the fact that there were so many main characters. Oh, no, characters that seeing all this could have just been a little bit confusing. However, despite that, Rave Master still could pull the heartstring. I mean, there were so many moments there that really made me feel inside. And now, more spoiler alerts. Haru's father's death. I mean, that was heartbreaking. Also, Jet's sacrifice was just as heartbreaking as that as well. And even when Haru was thought to be dying, but and when everyone was standing beside each other, that was also heartbreaking. Uh, and even finding out one secret about a villain was also very heartbreaking, but it also was very heartwarming. But one of the biggest heartbreaks was when one of their allies stayed behind in time, giving a whole new eeriness to the feeling that we saw. And then one of the most beautiful scenes was when every single ally joined up together in order to guide the heroes to the final battle. And in the final chapter, a lot of people complained about it because they thought they didn't make sense. But I still feel like that one scene was still very beautiful because it just meant that the world of Rave was described as being a memory world that was created from a destroying world. So in the end, what saved it wasn't just the heroes; it was the stars that was willing to give this world another chance. They were moved by the heroes' actions, and that's what I like. All in all, Rave Master was an 8 out of 10 for me, and it's a very good read about adventure. Yes, it staggers around many different arcs of it all, but the characters are easy to relate to. If you get behind the dirty arc in the beginning, you really get into it all, and it has some very funny moments of it all. And I'm just saying, for everyone who likes to write an adventure story, they should read Rave Master. It's a cult series and worthy to talk about. Now, let's get to his second most famous work, and arguably the one who will re- live the longest. Sorry, this live stream may actually be longer than I intended it to be. And that is Fairy Tale. Oh yes, Fairy Tale. The amount of hate Fairy Tale have gotten is honestly so big that it's actually aggravating. I mean, it's pretty ironic though. People love bullies, but they just don't seem to realize that they're being bullies themselves about Fairy Tale. There were so many things that people complained about of it that I actually, in the end, became a YouTuber just to defend it. Actually, yes, it's true. I became a YouTube bad manga reviewer because I wanted to defend Fairy Tale because no one I saw defended it. So I decided to become the one and only defender of it left, even if I wouldn't agree with it. Now, what was Fairy Tale's strongest point? I think the strongest point was its attacking system. Unlike Rave Master, who had an attacking system, but it was also very confusing. It wasn't exactly always watchable. One of the things that made Fairy Tale a lot easier because it had magic, a magic system about magic like that, and that made it a lot easier to follow the different strength of it all. Another thing is the characters. I mean, the characters did have simple characters, but characteristics. They were also easy to relate to, easy to understand, and the art eventually evolved very quickly to very fine one in those two as well. So it really did create a wonderful character of it all. The arcs were up and down, and the arcs weren't bad. Unlike Rave Master, this wasn't exactly an adventure. It was at one place, and then they went on adventures that eventually evolved into something more. So when it came to doing different story arcs in Fairy Tale, unlike Rave Master, it wasn't an adventure to a point. They were at a point, but they were doing side missions that had mixed like opinions, so to speak, to a lot of people. So maybe I will say that the arcs of a fairy tale may not always have worked. But granted, however, it had a very strong contender, so it had to adapt to that scenario because now no longer did people want to read adventure, they just wanted to read this action like story of it all. So what was Fairy Tale's uh, weakest points? I think it had to do with the very famous Troll Shima moments. We saw that in Rave Master as well. In fact, you should read Rave Master before you read Fairy Tale because there's a lot of Troll Shima moments in Rave Master as well. And that's actually one of the reasons why I became such a strong defender for Fairy Tale because I got used to it in Rave Master, so I accepted it when I saw it in Fairy Tale. However, not everybody liked that, and for good reasons. There were many ways that scenario could have gone better, but some moments were just acceptable and just let's move on. The rest, however, were not. Other thing that could have said that fights weren't exactly the best amount in Fairy Tale. They were flashy and they had good art, but unlike many other stories of its time, it wasn't like this. It was mostly just like this until we finally finish off like that. Or in other words, a one-shot KO. Although it wasn't necessarily a one-shot, it was mostly in those scenario, causing a lot of people to, well, complain. And complain they did. I curse all those high YouTubers that in the end just decided that no, this is just pure and simple trash. If you don't like it, then fine, but don't call it trash. Because Fairytale did in the end bring a lot of heartwarming moments. And unlike Rave Master, which by the way I didn't point this up, Rave Master also got an anime, but that anime is trash. Okay, it does not do the anime justice. The art of the anime is mushy. The acting, even both the dub and in the original, is actually not on the greatest point, and it doesn't capture the feeling of Rave Master. It doesn't clean. It actually needs to have a remake. They need to remake Rave Master and make it a full season animation of that all. They've done that to some ancient animes like Ushu and Tora, so why not that one? But Fairy Tail, however, Fairy Tail's anime was a lot more cleaner and a lot more action pumped. The music was good. When they got to emotional moments, the music, the scenario, and the acting really did hit my heart. And I'm not shy to admit I have cried when I watched those emotional Fairy Tail moments. It works, and it's perfect. I like it. As the special moment, there are so many moments that people just have to appreciate, especially like when Natsu obtains Fairytale. Gray has to say goodbye to his father, and defeating Fukuro, Ersa fighting off 100 monsters, Lucy confronting the Celestial King. I mean, there are just some moments there that people need to realize are awesome. I mean, Watch Mojo, when they had most awesome fairy tale moments, it's worth noting that Natsu, the main character of that one, also got the most high points, which I think is actually a flaw. Because when it came to characters, Fairytale really had it. So who were the main characters? It was Natsu Dragneel, the dragon slayer of fire, a hot-headed and impulsive, but always loyal to his friends. Lucy, the blonde, very big-boobed celestial spirit that could summon spirits. A little bit loud, and maybe the voice acting of Japanese may not always have worked, but she was also very friendly to a lot of people. Gray, a guy with an unconscious stripping habit and an ice wizard, that was actually a very fun play on the fact that despite being ice, he is always half naked, meaning Frost is not doing much. Ersa, the big boobed, super strong action girl that was just so the breakout character, and later joined by other characters like Wendy Marvell, the token mini girl that was just so adorable and so badass at the same time. In fact, when she gained Dragon Force, boy, did I cry. That was just so good. But yeah, it's about that thing I think we'll say about Fairytale. I like the stories, but even though I prefer Raymaster stories over Fairytale? Yes, maybe I do. I like the adventure more of Raymaster. However, the story in Fairytale is a lot more simpler and easier to understand, and the characters drive the story forward, and I like that about it. And the art is definitely one of its strongest points. And now we get to his final one, and this is actually just getting started. Let's think, it's how many chapters will it have now? 25 or 24? Eden's Zero. What was the first thing people said about it when it was about to premiere? And that was that the art is extremely similar. Now let's go in a little bit deeper in Eden Zero. But before we do that, we're gonna talk about one thing. Yes, Fairytale did have a lot of art style that was similar to Rave Master. However, since Rave Master hadn't introduced these characters just yet, Fairytale's art became a little bit more distinct from Rave Master. However, Eden Zero suffers from that. Its art has a lot of similarities with Fairytale, which makes a lot of longtime haters still turn their hate on Eden Zero for the lack of imagination in drawing art, as well as the fact that it's just another Fairytale for them. However, Eden Zero is about the story of a young girl, Rebecca, who looks a lot like Lucy, finding a young boy in a robot place called Shiki. They eventually befriend each other and flee the place when it seems like the robots have gone rogue. And so begins the adventure of Shiki, who later gets named Shiki Graham Bell. Now, I've only read as long as it's been. It's actually been the first manga that I've actually volunteered to review almost the very first chapter. Normally, I wait until I know that a series is going to be popular and if I like it, if I want to review it. But no, I reviewed that immediately because I believed it wouldn't premiere. And it did. It did premiere well. And I mean, it has sold well. I don't know if it has sold perfectly because I don't know how long it will ask. But let's just say, what is it that I have liked about Eden Zero so far? I think it's definitely the nostalgia factor. Actually, this while many may criticize that the art is very similar to Fairytale, the story is a lot more similarity to Raymaster. You know, an adventure. The gang meet up, they find the ship, and then they go on adventure finding these people, and later on go into different planets. And I feel like when it comes to adventure, that is one of the strongest points of Eden Zero because you don't know what's going to happen. You do worry though that if there will be any change in it, because if I am to be honest, while I like the adventure, I also am not 100% sure where Eden Zero is heading. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, at least. Then we come to the characters. There's just a small amount of characters, and the characters are pretty simple-minded, but we just got introduced to them. And they are cool. They may have many times many similar art styles to these different heroes, but they are also different. Shiki is like a fusion of Natsu and Haru. Haru is the fact he's a fusion of Haru because he's a lot more kind-hearted than Natsu. Who Natsu was still kind-hearted, but a lot more, and he's also a lot more alien, so to speak, like Natsu, because Natsu was raised by a dragon and shown many times, primitive-like behavior. Shiki does the same. However, he's just as impulsive as Natsu when it comes to his friends, but that's only because he doesn't have any friends to do it. But he's also a lot kind-hearted like Shiki. No, like Haru, seeing that he knows what is the difference between a robot and a human being, and knows that even a robot has a heart. So, and then we have Rebecca. I mean, Rebecca, I don't really know where I can place her. Right now, she shares many Lucy similarities, but also a lot more dizziness than Lucy. And that dizziness is very much similarities to how Ellie's character is. I think the biggest complaint people have, me included, is the fact that we saw a Happy again. And Happy was the mascot of Fairytale. Every single show of Hiro Mishima, including his cult shows, which, by the way, I don't know all of their names of. Monster Hunter Orange, I think one was. And in fact, that was a guy who was named Shiki. I think it was that one, or was it someone else? Unfortunately, these didn't kick off, which is very bad. They deserve to do that. And I know what you're saying. How do you know that if you don't know about them? Okay, I have read a little bit about them, but that doesn't mean I read them every time, so I don't memorize them. Okay, it's cult series. I don't memorize that much when they are not long. However, every single show of the Hiromashimas had mascots. Plu always appeared in every single Hiromashima work because, after all, Rave Master was his first, but Plu was the mascot of Rave Master. And if we're going to the big shots, Happy was the mascot of Fairytale. Now, who is the mascot of the third one? Well, a lot of people still say it's Happy. It's worth noting that this Happy is a lot more different character-wise than the Happy of Fairytale. The Happy of Fairytale was a gadfly, a guy who likes to mess with them and could fly and was a little bit, chirpy. While this Happy is still very chirpy, he's not a gadfly. He's more an only sane man and also a lot more shy than the original Happy. And also, he temporarily gets more clothes, unlike the Happy who's always naked. So, but no, I don't think the Happy of Eden Zero is the mascot of Eden Zero. No, I think E.M. Pino, the robot android girl, is the mascot because she carries on the tradition of previous mascots. She's small and she's cute, and that's what I like about that. I like Pino's character because I feel like she has the potential to become even more. Maybe, who knows? Maybe even evolve. I just hope she is just as kind-hearted as she is. Now, Eden Zero's main negative part, as I said before, is mostly the fact that even though we do know where the story is heading, we also do not know how it's going to head there, and we don't know that even if we head there, it's going to be as we want to. Because it feels like the story is rushing a lot, which, in all honesty, is not always a bad thing. But we also do not know, is this really what we want? Because the main story is basically to get to this cosmic unity called Mother. And let's just say, for argument's sake, they do. Shouldn't the story be finished then? What else could there be in Eden Zero than just exploring? They could go on adventures a lot more, and maybe even save planets if they wanted to. Are they going to do that? I wonder, because after all, there are not a clear antagonist yet, and there's a lot of characters that we have yet to actually see. Even though we have seen them a little bit, we still don't know a lot about them. But again, Eden Zero has just begun. It began in the spring, so it's too early. It is too early to really say how it's going. We have to wait till the end of the year, and also in the entire 2019, to see how it happens. But I plan on, at least until the year end, to talk a little bit more about that then. You can join me if you want to. It's basically these things I was talking about. Hiro Mashima's work all carries with it a theme, though. So let's talk a little quickly about that. Is the power of friendship. It was strongest in Fairytale, but it has always been in every single of his art. Haru Glory's friendships with his others was drew in Rave Master, and it was also what gave them the willpower to defeat the final antagonists. Power of friendship was even reflected in magic. The stronger you feel, and the stronger it's there. While the power of friendship is not as strong in Eden Zero as it even in Slam Shade as being ridiculous, it's worth noting that together they can really make a difference. And that is most reflected in the happy blasters that Rebecca always wielded. Another thing is adventure is also a theme of it all. It was mostly in Rave Master and also in Eden Zero, but even though Fairytale didn't have adventure, they did have the adventure of going on with it in a guild. Then it's the characters. No matter how much it happens, every single Hiro Mashima story has characters you can relate to, and that are simple to understand, and you like them for that. And then let's see, what else do they have? Well, Fairytale and Raymaster had epic battles when it came to an antagonist. Raymaster had a vampire king, Droid. No, Droid. I forgot his name. It's lost in translation. Fairytale Hades. Or Eden Zero, if it's gonna continue, also gonna have that. Very likely. But that's too early to tell. And what else do they have? Well, they have emotion. While Eden Zero hasn't yet hit all the heartstring, they do show the emotion when they do it. But both Raymaster and Fairytale, and even Eden Zero, has moments there where it tugs your heartstrings, and that's very well done. It has art. The greatest thing about Hiro Mashima's work in his stories is always the art. It reflects the comedy and it reflects the characters, and it works. I think that's one of the themes that they all have in common. Well, if there's anything else, well, you can just give me your thoughts if you have any. This was my Hiro Mashima discussion of this, people. So you give me your thoughts if you have any.